Welcome to the Good Talk Podcast, where we remind you of the joy of life, the love of God, and the possibilities that lie ahead.
That was dramatic.
Episode 46, Coping with Change, Part 2.
Yeah, we got so much good feedback from Part 1. And I guess it's obviously something we all deal with, so.
Yeah, change.
Part 2.
Yeah, I'm going to dive. We talked, I'll get there in just a second, but we talked about those 4 stages of grief.
Yeah.
But we just listed them.
Yeah.
I want to do a little deeper dive into those because I think it'll be really helpful for people who might feel trying to find out where they are in the process of change. Yeah,
okay.
So we'll get into that.
Yay. Another amazing thing we're really excited about is we kind of talked about it last week a little bit.
Goal Getter, yes.
Yeah, Goal Getter.
I'm so excited. So we've been working on this course. So over a year ago, I had an idea of launching something called Dream Year. Mm-hmm. And ended up filling up a group of 15. We opened up a second group of 15. The past year, I took those 2 groups through what we call Dream Year, chasing after their biggest dreams and goals. Had an absolute blast. Saw some incredible results. Yeah. Saw some really cool relationships formed. Mm-hmm. And really took the best of everything that I learned over the course of that year, mm-hmm. doing a deep dive with those 2 groups, and boiled it down into a much shorter course called Goal Getter, mm-hmm. that I think has the best of everything, again, from the past year. So I am super excited to officially launch Goal Getter.
Yep.
It's kind of a soft launch right now.
Yep.
We're really only telling you guys about it here on the podcast. But
yeah.
And you've worked your tail off on it too, because it's a video-driven course. So I teach essentially, it's 6 sessions.
And then 2 bonus sessions.
And 2 bonus sessions.
So technically 8, yeah.
All about, again, chasing after your most important goals and dreams. And I just love this. There are very few things I love as much as coming along somebody mm-hmm. who has an idea, a dream, a goal, something they want to do with their life, mm-hmm. and coming alongside them and helping them map out a journey. Practically mm-hmm. for how to get there. I love doing that. And I get to do that some with one-on-one coaching, but I have very, very limited number of slots to do that. Mm-hmm. This allows this information and this process to be available to anybody.
Yeah, and it can be consumed quicker, right?
Yes.
Like not everybody has a year to give. So I'm really excited. We have a couple options. Actually, we have 3, but the 2 bigger ones are your self-guided option, which mm-hmm. you can go through. Say you want to just crank through it. You can do that really easily. And then I would say the courses aren't super long, but what takes longer is the exercises and like you doing the work.
There's lots of exercises and worksheets mm-hmm. with each session. Because, again, we want it to be super practical. So We're walking you through, setting you up to, have your best chance mm-hmm. at meeting that goal or dream.
Yep. So there's self-guided option, and there's the group coaching option, which is similar to what Pete did with that group of people this past year, 2021. So you can sign up to be part of like a group coaching call, which is super fun. That's when you get like the network of people and really kind of get to engage other people who are kind of on a journey. So you could be like, I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to take my business to the next level, or I want to write a book. Like you had so many different people that kind of came in with different dreams. And what I love about this content is it doesn't matter what the dream is, this content is applicable.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. This has been really cool to watch you kind of develop this. And I was kind of at first like, how can you develop a content that applies to everybody? And you did an incredible job. And it's so practical. It's the kind of stuff I need. I need very tangible, practical steps for something that feels out of reach. So I think it's really exciting. So if you're interested in it, you can go to thegoalgettercourse.com. That is the Goal Getter, GOAL, goalgettercourse.com. And you can see kind of more information, what the sessions look like. And then you can, look at your options for purchasing and all of that.
Woohoo!
Goal
I'm excited. I think it'll be really helpful to some people.
Yeah.
Where it's that time of year. I love this time of year because we start thinking about and dreaming about
mm-hmm.
like what we want to see happen in 2022. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be great.
Yay. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
And it's Christmas time.
Woohoo!
We have been cranking out some Christmas movies.
We have. We disagree most times about what we want to watch.
We do.
So we're sitting on the couch last night, and I wanted to watch like A Christmas Carol, which is a very classic movie. And he's like, no, I want to watch a Hallmark movie. What?
Well, you're gonna sell me out. I'm gonna lose my man card.
Yeah, you are.
Well, because we only had like an hour, and I didn't want to
But that's
get.
when you put on a classic because you already know the storyline. Hallmark. Well, I guess you know the storyline of Hallmark too.
Trust me, I know the storyline of every, and I just wanted something feel good.
I know, and I love Hallmark movies. I like Hallmark the most between November and December 1, when I'm really not supposed to be watching Christmas movies,
Yeah.
but it's on. It feels like a treat. Once I'm in Christmas, like December 10th, I'm ready for like my classics. Give me my hardcore classics. What's your favorite Christmas movie?
That's hard. I have a favorite, like 5 maybe.
Give me 2, and give me, like, you can put them
Elf
in categories.
and Christmas Vacation.
Oh, that was okay. Mine was definitely Christmas Vacation. That by far was my favorite.
I'll tell you one that has really come on stronger and stronger for me over time is Christmas with the Cranks.
I know, that's a good one.
I would say even maybe 5 years ago, it wasn't one I really, maybe once a year, but I've already probably watched it 2 or 3 times this year.
Yeah. No, I like that one. I like Four Christmases. It's
Oh
so
my
funny.
gosh.
Obviously, I'm like gearing towards the humor side of Christmas movies.
Yeah.
Polar Express is like that's like the
Polar Express and Grinch would probably also round
Yes.
out my top 5.
those are like the Christmas Eve classics. You have to watch them.
Yep.
Feel good. Oh, let's watch it right now.
But I just had an hour, and I just wanted to chill with some Hallmark.
He did, and we did. You're welcome.
It was terrible too.
It was so bad. It's always the same story. It's like the girl who her boyfriend broke up with her and she wants to open up a Christmas tree lot, and the big city lawyer is going to come in and he's going to take it down. And then this good old homeboy that she dated back in high school comes in and saves the day.
Well, it's we've talked about this before, but what's also confusing is there's really only about 6 actors.
I know.
And
The same stars.
And I think they do 3 or 4 a year. And so I walk by and I see a particular actor. I'm like, oh, I've seen that one. And then you listen for, they're like, oh, actually, I haven't.
It's so bad. I love it. I'm not hating. I have a glass.
I would
of
be
a
in
counter.
one. I'd be in one. Absolutely. If somebody if there's anyone from Hallmark
Oh
listening,
my gosh.
I'll do Lifetime
With your
too.
acting skills?
I would be in one. I would give it a shot. Now, I don't want a starring role. I just want to be like running the tree lot, something like that, something that feels kind of natural.
You would be so over the top. They'd be like, "Hey, Pete, please dial it down." Welcome to my tree lot.
No, seriously, I want in. So if anybody's listening,
please
get
don't.
me in.
Please don't do it.
I'll even be an extra.
You could
I'm
probably
sure
do
they
that.
shoot some of those in Nashville.
We've
I know
seen it.
do.
They shot one down the road the other day. Anyway,
I got a chance. I've got a chance.
No, you don't.
Okay.
You want to talk about something actually important?
Oh, let's talk about change.
Change. Coping with change. Part 2. Things I hate the most. Change.
Yeah. Well, so we talked obviously in the last podcast about change, and while many of us, probably most of us don't like change. We're not like eager for, I want some change. It's a necessary part of life. When nothing new can get in, we said that's death. When oxygen can't find a way in, you die, right? So at the same time, though, new is scary, and it can be disappointing, and sometimes it can be confusing. We had this all figured out, and now we don't. And so we said change almost always leads to one of 2 responses. There's the dig in and close down. So energetically, what that feels like is it's this desperate reaching back for the way things were. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be content unless things go back to exactly the way they were.
It's like a decision. Yeah.
Yep, you just shut down, right? Then there's also another response, which is more of an opening up, right? It's the assumption that there's something new here, and we'll find our way into this newness. We're open to that. That maybe we needed this new. That even though the newness might be scary, it might be confusing. Ultimately, new is life. And so there's those 2 responses. But my experience has been that most people bounce back and forth between those 2 responses.
Sure.
It's not that some people are just always closed down to change, all change, and then some people are just open to all change. Usually there's those 4 stages we talked about that everybody kind of goes through, and you kind of bounce around. It's not a linear progression. There's a lot of different factors that impact how we react to change. One of the biggest being whether or not we initiated the change. Even if you're the one who initiated the change or you wanted the change, it doesn't mean that there aren't lots of mixed emotions that come along with that change. And then there's certain changes that happen to you where you feel like you have no control. And those are obviously more difficult to work through. But let's just dive into these 4 stages of grief. And if you don't get anything else out of this, for those of you who feel like you're in the middle of some kind of confusing change, I hope you'll be able to identify where you fall in the progression of these 4 stages, and that it creates a little normalcy for you where you're like, oh,
it's like a path.
Oh, okay. Right. That's where I'm at now. I don't have to stay there forever. And this is maybe what's coming next.
I think that's super helpful. Anytime you're in a kind of a grieving state, it feels hopeless, or it feels like there's not a light. So I feel like if you have kind of that understanding of, okay, I'm just here, but this isn't forever, and here's what's coming. And not only here's what's coming, but you can almost prepare for what's coming when you know that that's the option.
Yep, for sure. So stage 1 is shock and disorientation, right? When the change first happens, especially if it's sudden, if it's a big change, it can literally feel like a physical blow. And this might be a divorce. This might be a death of a loved one. This could be an economic crisis. This could be a health issue. This could mean you got fired. It could also mean something positive, like you had a baby. We talked about that last week. And we talked about how it's turned our world upside down. It's something we wanted, we hoped for, we prayed for, and it happened. But man,
whiplash.
Yeah, it kind of, impacted, a lot of different things. So what's interesting about this first phase, this shock and disorientation, that I think most people aren't prepared for, is whatever that initial change is, change also often works like a domino effect. So there is a single change, but it's rarely isolated to just that change. There's this domino effect in your life. So let's say you go through a divorce. The biggest change is now you're not married, right? Your spouse that you were with is no longer present in your life. But that change is not isolated to just that change.
Right.
There's a domino effect. What's likely going to happen, and it happens a lot in divorces, is then you end up losing a lot of other relationships that maybe you've cultivated for years. I know people whose parents disown them or disengage with them because they went through a divorce, or the religious institution that they were attending or a part of, community, falls apart for them. So there's a domino effect that often happens in change. And that's part of that disorientation and confusion of, oh, I thought I just lost my job. Oh, now I feel like I've lost my identity. Now, see.
Which is why it feels like everything's falling apart, not just the relationship, or not just the job or the baby, it feels like everything around you.
Yep. Yeah, it's not like if you get fired, it's not that you just have change in your economic situation. You also might have change in, again, you're going to lose relationships that you had at work. You
lose your confidence. You lose, there's just so much that with all of it that boils down.
Yep. So what I would say, if you're in this stage, one of the most important things you could do, a first priority, is seek reliable information that helps you make sense of the situation. Because it feels like it's all spinning out of control. And so what I would say is, about everything that you start to think in this stage, you should ask 2 questions. The first question is this true? And then the second question is almost just like it, is this absolutely true?
When you're talking about, like, when you're making statements about your reality, is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yes, and about your life. So let's say you're going through the change of a divorce. That's just an easy one for you and I to talk about. You might in that moment say things like, I will never meet somebody again. I'm going to be alone the rest of my life. I'd follow that up with, is that true? And then, is that absolutely true? To which you would have to say, no, I don't know that to be. It feels like that right now, but I don't think that's probably absolutely true. In fact, if you were saying that to me, I would point to the statistical evidence, which says it is highly likely that you're going to not only meet somebody again, but get remarried again.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, on the other side of that coin, again, I'm just spinning off this scenario because it's relevant to us. Divorce is not the specific scenario, but maybe you're the person who didn't want the divorce, and so the truth you would say is, I hate that person, it's all this person's fault, and then, but if you can have the ability in that moment to say, is this true? Is it really all that person's fault?
Yeah.
No. But if you're able to ask that question, I feel like the health immediately rises, and your likeliness to live in resentment goes down.
Yeah.
Because didn't you say last week that is it this stage that when people sit and boil in this?
No, that's the next stage.
The next stage where they just live in their resentment. But yeah, I feel like if even when you're on the on the side of the change where you're like fighting it and you didn't want the change because you felt like something was done to you, I feel like those two questions like just enlighten so much growth.
True? Is it absolutely true?
Yeah.
I'll give you another great example. The change that we talked about last week of having a baby. There were some difficult days where we were exhausted, and you start thinking things like, I'm never going to have a life again. I'm never going to actually get dressed and leave the house and go on a date with my wife again. You have to, it's shock and disorientation, right? And you're just kind of grasping for what's real, what's true. And following that up, is that true? Is it absolutely true? For me, it's like, no, it's not absolutely true that you're never going to leave your house again and go on a date with your wife. This is a season, So I think that's helpful. Yeah. All right. I got to keep going. Stage 2, anger and other emotional responses. All right. Now, what'll happen is the initial disorientation and confusion will usually quite quickly give way to a strong wave of emotions. Now, you talked about blaming a second ago. This is where the blame usually kicks in, right? This is where, it was the boss's fault. In fact, I was thinking about this morning when I was working, scratching out some notes on this. Over the years, I have been in the unfortunate position of having to let people go from a job. And it's so painful, right? And you can see these stages in it, like the initial when you look somebody in the eyes and say, I'm so sorry, I've got to let you go. It's usually not anger. It's usually like, what? It's the shock and disorientation. But they're almost numb in that moment. Rarely are they angry. Rarely are they upset. They receive the news. They walk out the door, right? Maybe we cry together, whatever. 24 hours, 48 hours later, if I have a follow-up meeting with them, it's usually quite different. They're mad. They're angry, right? This is your fault. Why didn't you, help me see this was coming? Why? Or they're blaming another team member. Like, this wasn't my fault. This was their fault that they did this, right? And so that's a normal progression, right?
And some of it might be true. Like, there may be some truth in that. Yeah.
Yep. And what I've seen is if you don't blame your boss, or you don't blame your spouse, or you don't blame somebody else, you don't blame the president for whatever the changes that's happening in your life, you'll probably turn that anger on yourself. This is especially true when you've initiated the change. Like, I remember when I resigned from my job of being a pastor at Crosspoint, a church that I started. I was there, I don't know, like 15 years. I initiated that change. I knew I needed to leave. I knew the timing was right. I wasn't in a healthy spot to lead that church. But I remember sitting at my new job a couple months later and being so angry at myself, being, Pete, you're such an idiot. Why'd you do that? Like that was your dream job. That was, again, it wasn't really reality. I was in this stage of anger and other emotional responses. So again, I just say it's quite natural. It's a normal step in the progression of coming to terms with change. How long are you going to be there? How long is it healthy to be there? That's going to change for every person.
Depending on the situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Stage 3, coming to terms with your new normal. So during this stage, you're going to focus, hopefully begins to shift away from what you lost to now you're looking at what's new. And this process can be slow, and it usually kind of happens over time, but all of a sudden you find yourself thinking more about what's ahead instead of looking back at what you've lost or what's changed. You start to explore more deeply what this change means. What new growth can happen that couldn't happen before the change. What new relationships are forming that couldn't form before the change. So you got to be patient. Come to terms with that. My warning for you in this stage, if this is where you're at, it's vital that you avoid pretending that everything is okay, right? So if it's not, if it's not okay, you have to be honest about that. And you might regress back to stage 2, but regress back to stage 2 and deal with what you have to deal with, or you're going to find yourself repeating stage 2 over and over and over and over if you're trying to, fake it till you make it.
That's where baggage comes from.
Big time.
That's baggage. That's like, I never actually healed from this, and I pretended I did, and then it carries through so much in your future.
That's what, you hear people talk about triggers, like, oh, that person triggered me, that job triggered me, that movie triggered me. It's because they never really progressed out of stage 2. They went into stage 3, but they were faking it the whole time.
Yeah.
So
I would say the transition between stage 2 and 3 is the hardest of all these.
By far.
Yeah.
by far. And again, in most situations, there's a pretty natural progression from stage 2 to 3. But there can be things, and there can be stuff from your past that hasn't been dealt with that keeps you stuck there. So you just got to be sensitive to that. So stage 4 is the acceptance and the moving forward, right? This is a stage when you come to fully accept that, this change of your circumstance, it's reality. This is the way it's going to be. And you're starting to look at, the positive things, right? And you just accept that. It doesn't mean that you give up entirely on your former situation. Hopefully you have some valuable memories, you have some skills, you have some relationships that you carry forward. But
ability to have compassion.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the point here is you're moving on. Whether it's in your career or whether it's in your wider life, you're moving on. And those are kind of those 4 stages. Yeah.
It's hard.
It is. And so I want to wrap up talking about change by kind of addressing 2 things. The first I would say to you is, if you're listening to this and it's like super clear to you that you're stuck in stage 2, I would say get some help, right? Get some help. Raise the white flag and just say, I need some help. And whether that's a coach, whether that's a therapist, whether that's your spiritual director, whatever. Because if not, that resentment can really sink in and take root. And we've talked about this before, but bitterness and resentment are never isolated to the source of the bitterness and resentment. They're going to spread far and wide and impact every relationship you have. And so stage 2 is normal, but if you get stuck there and you're feeling it over and over again, instead of the feeling coming and then fading, resentful people are always holding on to things that hurt them. It's like we talked about last week. You're holding on to that burning piece of wood.
Yeah. And in my experience, what I've seen is resentful people attract resentful people. So often it's hard to heal from your resentment because people are validating it, because they too are resentful about something and they know, deep down it's toxic. So I feel like you find community in that resentment, and then that's when it's really hard to move on, is because you're finding other people affirming you when deep down it's toxic. They know it's toxic, but that's when people, band together in their toxicity. That's common with any kind of toxic
Is it
behavior.
Misery Loves Company? Is that the
Yeah.
saying? Yeah.
But anyway, I say that to say, like, if you're in that stage and you're like, well, but all these people say, is probably because they're also carrying similar baggage, right? So it's just something to be aware of.
Yeah. So 0 guilt.
Yeah.
0. I hope you feel no guilt or shame over this. But if you recognize you're stuck in stage 2, maybe it's time to get some help to kind of help move you into that stage 3 and 4. The other thing I would say is, in wrapping this up, is I know that this is a really tough time of year for people, especially those of you who haven't experienced a new change, right? This is maybe your first Christmas season with your new change, and things are different. They don't feel the same. We talked about this last week, but this time of year more than ever, there's something inside of us that wants to reach back to the past, and we want things to be the same, to be the way they've always been, to carry forth those traditions. So I know this can be a difficult time, and I hope for you, I read this quote this week, and I couldn't find it, so I don't know exactly what the quote was, but I saw it on Instagram, and it basically said this: loneliness is not the physical absence of other people. It's kind of that sense that no one sees you or understands you. So you could, you
can be in a room full of people
and still feel really lonely. And so what I would say to you is, while we may not be physically with you, I hope this makes you feel seen. I hope that you understand that we kind of know the realities of change. We've been through change. We're in the middle of some new change right now, right? And that we see you. And I hope this just makes you feel a little more understood, where you're like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is normal. I see where I'm at in the progression of change.
And there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
And there is light, and there is hope at the end of that tunnel. And so we hope, if you're in a season of change right now, which is difficult during this holiday season, that that you're not alone, and we're for you. You're going to get through this. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and new, while we often don't like it, it is life, and it is where growth happens. And so, in a weird way, I'm excited to see what might happen in your life on the other side of that change.
So good. I hate change.
Yes,
this is so good.
Yes,
no, I needed that. I think it's so nice to have those practical steps. Speaking of practical steps, Goal Getter, just a reminder, if you guys are interested, check out the website, thegoalgettercourse.com. That'll tell you a lot more than we told you. If you have questions, reach out to us. There's forms for that too. And next week we're doing a Christmas episode.
Yes. I don't know what that means.
I don't either. No, yes, you do.
Maybe some Christmas attire.
Definitely Christmas PJs for sure. But people listening on the podcast don't care.
And hot cocoa?
No. Because do you know how annoying that is when you're like on a mic and you're like...
That's you. That you have noises.
No, it isn't. I have a auditory like sensitivity to people chewing and sipping on things.
In other words, if I want to eat a chip, we've talked about this.
Oh God.
I have to go into like the chip.
It's not just a chip.
Chip
never
closet.
Mind. I'm not even going into it. I'm not even going to go into it. I'm way too passionate about it. But anyways, next week we'll have a Christmas episode. That'll be, the week of Christmas. Oh my gosh. So you can listen to it while you're driving places maybe. And yeah, I'm super excited.
Awesome.
Woo-hoo.
I can't wait.
Merry Christmas.
We love you guys. Merry Christmas. We'll talk to you next week.